if you heard earlier in the week, I lost like, I don't know, 10 hours worth of video. And so I was like, man, I'm bummed. Like I lost all this content. But I realized that I have so many partners and so many people that rock with me. And I was, I was like, let me get some of my friends to join me on an episode. And then we could just talk and chop it up and talk about career services and particularly being fathers in this space. So I was like, I reached out to my Eastern Ace people. I reached out to Bob, Noah, Joe, Junior, Walt, all these dudes, and they said, "Yeah, we down." So I'm so excited for this. And the agenda is what we're going to do is I'm going to bring on all these gentlemen one by one for the next hour, and then we're going to chop it up, have a conversation, and go on to the next one. So for those that join us, jump in at any moment. If you missed this episode live, it's okay. I'm going to share this later. It's going to be up on Instagram, not Instagram, sorry, LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as the normal Positive Philter channels. So I'm really, really excited for this. So let me just go ahead and get started. I'm really excited for this first one. Each one about 15 minutes. I'm really excited. My main man, you may know him from, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an episode or something like a show, Chicago Fire or something, I don't know. But you may recognize this gentleman from all the work from the Eastern Ace episodes of Conversations with Bob and Phil. I have no one I'd like to start off better than this gentleman. I'm going to have my friend Bob Bullard come on here. So here you go, Bob. Welcome.
What's up, Phil? How are you, man?
Good. I'm doing great. It's, was it thriving and surviving? Some days I'm thriving. Some days I'm just surviving. But today, seeing you, I feel like I'm thriving. So for those that don't know who you are, give us a little elevator pitch, who you are and what you're about as we ask questions as it relates to career services and being a father.
No, I'm feeling the pressure right now. I mean, you teach students how to do this, and now you have to do it yourself. So I'm Bob Bullard. I'm the Assistant Vice President of Professional Success at Rowan University. I've been in this role for about 3 months. Prior to that, I was the Director of Career Services for about 4 years. Been at Rowan for the last 11 years, really trying to help people find purpose and kind of what that means to them, and understanding that careers are a lot of jobs together and then kind of bringing something larger together. So we had parents with this the other day that their 18-year-olds will be working till 2071, 2072. And some of the parents looked at me like, what? But again, understanding and trying to make sure we can help them make the connections. I am a very proud father of 4 children. So 2 girls, 2 boys. And no, and the intersection is there. There's a lot of lessons that you try to teach your students that you want to bring home to your children, and vice versa. There's things that you learn from your children that you definitely want to like, hey, this is, and then trying just to take my own advice to students and children, like, hey, maybe I know I tell people this, or I tell my children this, and maybe it's time for me to start listening to some of my own advice here. So no, but really, really happy to be here with you, man. It's good to see you again.
I'm so happy to be here and I'm smiling. So I'm just going to get right into it being a father. I mean, you got a bunch of kids. Man, do you think that all your kids need to go to college?
No, you know what? That's a really good question. And I was very blessed. I'm a first generation college student. I'm very blessed that my family worked ridiculously hard to give me the opportunity to go to college. And it's something that I think it was the best decision for me. But after college, I worked in blue collar work for about 2 years, then decided to go back and get a graduate degree. But for me, that was a real kind of awakening or finding in my life that I liked working in the blue collar work, but I never thought it was for me. I'll be very honest. I didn't have the talent my father had. My father is one of the best in the world at what he does, and I would have to YouTube stuff still. So probably knew it wasn't going to be the best fit for me. But the biggest thing for me as a parent, or even me as a career services practitioner, is that we want to get you the necessary training for you to be successful in your life. So the second, if one of my children says they want to pursue a field or a career without formal education, we're going to go out of our way to make sure that they can get the informal education. The biggest thing is that you're always going to be a lifelong learner. If that's a 4-year college for some, or 2-year college, the biggest thing as a parent is I just want to make sure that, and for my wife and I, that we provide all the options to our students. If that's 4-year college, that's great. If that's a master's degree, that's great. If it's something, hey, I want to go to 2-year school, that's great. They're like, hey, I want to do something that doesn't require formal education, but I want to do this, that's great too. For me, it's hopefully instilling on our children that you want to be a lifelong learner, that even if you go to high school or you go to college, it doesn't stop there. That degree isn't the last time you're going to be quote unquote learning. So no, I don't. For us, it's more about making sure our students can find, excuse me, my children can find
Man, you're so used to
happiness
that.
and joy. See how that slip there?
Yeah, we're so used
Happiness
to
and
it.
joy
Like,
in their lives. So
and
used
it's
to that.
funny.
I'm like,
No, we're so used to that because I think, I be calling, not saying my students my kids, but like I feel like I'm their uncle already. You know what I'm saying? So I get a very personal attachment to the students I help. So
no,
maybe I see that
it's for
Freudian
real.
slip. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, and again, they're not kids; they're students. But I know I call my children students sometimes. They look at me like, "Dad, you all right?" I'm like, "Leave Daddy alone. Daddy needs some time to detox from work." But yeah, no, I think if we can provide the opportunity for them to get the training they need, if that's college, great. If it's 2-year community college, great. If it's a trade school, great. If it's something that they can take their talents and go pro, and I say that half joking, but without going to school, that's great too. I want to make sure that they have all those opportunities.
So one of the things I think about is also like as I identify strengths, right? Now I'm more keen on it, and so like I'd be like, my son loves math already, and I'm like I'm already like STEM, get him in the computers, you know what I'm saying? Like, So like, can you take us that? Do you already start seeing like try to put the pieces together and see the strengths in your kids and be like, that's a career in that, Does that happen to you or
Yeah, no,
no?
I think I don't. I talk to some people at work. Sometimes you start like connecting the dots for your children without them knowing it yet. You're like, oh, you know what? They would be a good lawyer. Oh yeah, doctor. But I think the important thing too is that trying to make sure that you keep a watchful eye, but allow them to have their own experiences too. Like, I go back to my experience. I'm very lucky I had parents that 100% cared about my future, but were 100% okay with me finding my own way to that. And I know a lot of times in our society we default to like, well, this has the best paying job.
Mhm.
And don't get me wrong, I'd be lying if I didn't say money wasn't important in some respect, but also want my children to thrive in their careers and to grow and have that ability and find something that they can do that allows them to come to work every day and at least have that spark. I'm not going to say there's not going to be good days and bad days, and or you might switch jobs and careers. But for me, I much rather my children get the skill sets they need to be successful in their careers, regardless of their major, than say you need to be a lawyer because it might pay you the most money someday.
I love it. I love it. So this pandemic is hard. COVID's been hard. You got 4 kids wrangled in the home. That's hard. How have you dealt with that hard?
No,
Like,
I'm very blessed that, and I say is I have just an amazing support network. I mean, I have an amazing wife who also works in higher ed, so she sees it. She's a professor, so an amazing, just a broader network. But I think it for someone like myself, and I know we talked about this before, it gave me a unique time to be with my children that I probably never would have gotten without this. And not that I would ever wish for a pandemic to happen again like that, but it's something that I got to see things on a day-to-day basis. I got very used to being around them all day. And it was something very, very kind of cool. And, hey, we're going to do this together. And I'd be lying if there weren't trials and tribulations. And if I had to learn second grade math one more time, I think I threw more pencils and got more upset than my children did. But I think sometimes, again, for me, I'm very blessed. I found something that I enjoy and I love working with people and helping people and supporting people. And I see this as a means to supporting my family and our family. But also sometimes you have to make those tough decisions between, there's an event or there's a meeting or whatever it may be. And the pandemic in a way, well, I mean, just being at home in a way allowed myself especially to be centered again and say, hey, I'm doing this work because I like helping others, but I'm doing it because it's for my family and it's important. And I wouldn't give back that year or so saying that because we had such a unique experience, and the house is crazy every day, but at the end of it, I wouldn't trade that time away, a time without my kids, with my kids for the world, really.
I love it. Well, we're about to have our next guest. So, as we did on the episodes of Conversations with Bob and Phil, if you have one gem you can leave the listeners, and maybe particularly as it relates to fatherhood or careers, what would be that one gem you want to leave before you bounce today?
You know what? People have always talked to me about balance, right? This idea of balance. And I've come to learn in my career that balance, and I'm reading Tim Grover's Winning. So Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and he's an athletic trainer. But he said, when you put things at balance, it keeps the scale at zero. So you really get nothing out of quote unquote balance. So starting to learn that when I'm at work, I need to be at work, right? And I need to be so present at work but when I'm at home, I need to be at home. Or if I'm at the soccer game or I'm at the football game, I'm at the football game. And it's allowed me balance in the sense that being ridiculously present, being radically present at what I'm doing. And I think the pandemic kind of shocked that system a little bit because you had to be like, I had that 5 minutes away from the kids that day. I needed to send out that email. I needed to connect with someone or, an off-campus partner. So for me, I'm starting to realize it's okay to invest that time in yourself, in your work. And it might look different every week, but what I've been working towards, especially coming back after the pandemic, is that when I'm at work, I need to be at work. So when I'm at home, I could be at home. And vice versa. When I'm home, I could be at home. So when I get to work, I'm not saying I don't think about it on vice versa, but it's starting to get me to the point where it leads to better efficiency. But I don't feel like I've missed something because I know I was all in when I got home, or vice versa. I was all in. It's still something I grapple with all the time. Like, I want to pick up the phone. I want to answer that email. Or when I'm at work, I'm like, I want to call my wife and say, hey, what happened with the kids here? I feel like myself wanted talking about work and home when I'm not at work or home, but going back and kind of getting that scheduling order, that balance is important. And if you look at overall, it's balance, but it's hard to balance in the moment. So it's more about, no, I'm here. Like, I'm here right now. Like, there isn't a place I'd rather be. I'm here. Can't wait to hear everyone else. But, 7 minutes from now, I might be putting the kids to bed. Yeah. But then, you know what I mean? So it sometimes gets down to that minute by minute, but it's so important that being present, because again, for your children, they look forward to that. But for your students, they're looking forward to your colleagues, your partners. I mean, at the end of the day, your presence is so important, and you being there mentally, physically, emotionally, it allows you to be invested in every sense of the word.
Sheesh. Man, I think we can just wrap up the show, man. You're dropping mics on us, man.
No, you know what? Shout out to Tim.
I don't know why you did this.
Tim Grover, man. That book is I was a former student athlete. I like sports. I like the whole kind of grind. He's got some really good tidbits there. So audiobook. I mean, as a dad of 4, I don't do much reading, but audiobook, I pop in the audiobook and fold that laundry. I'm killing it then.
Well, thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Philip. Hey, real quick, what frat are you in? I've never seen those.
I don't know. Before. I mean, what's the ones on my shirt? I don't know.
The oldest and the coldest? Is that what it is? Oldest and coldest?
Shut up. Thank you so much, sir. You know it. You recognize
Hey,
real.
Man, it's always a pleasure. It's great seeing you again, and love all your work. And thank you for making me a part of this, man.
Thank you so much. All right.
See you.
All right. So next up, thank you, man. That was Bob. Me and Bob had a great year to year. He really, honestly, I give him a lot of credit. He helped elevate me in my career. We did a conference together, called Eastern Ace, and in regards to leadership, he was just someone that made me feel more comfortable in myself. So I give him a lot of credit. I'm really grateful to him. So next we got Joe. I was going to mispronounce his last name. I'm not doing it again. I did it on my own podcast. Joe has been a guest before on Positive Philter, and we actually talked about this very topic. So Joe might be saying the same things. I'm going to throw the link later in the chat. But before we get started, Joe, can you pronounce your last name again for me so I don't murder
Absolutely. it? Absolutely. Yeah, you're not the first person to not pronounce it correctly, and won't be the last, but it's Santa Cruz.
I was about to say that, Santa Cruz. I was very close, but I don't want to. So Joe Santa Cruz, he's a dope dude. And Joe, before we get started, go ahead and give the listeners a little bit of a background on you, and then we go ahead and get this conversation started.
Sure. Well, first, let me start off by saying thanks again for having me on. Second time, I feel like I'm in some elite company right now. So excited to be here, excited to have this conversation with you. And I know it's a little bit about what we did on our episode. So I'm really excited to kind of continue that work and that conversation. And props to you and Bob for your work this past year with Eastern Ace. You guys killed it with those shows. Really enjoyed it. I tried to tune in as much as I could when they were live, and if not, make sure I got them when they were recorded. So thanks for that. So yeah, Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Santacroce. Current position is Associate Director of Industry Outreach in Boston University. It's a new position I'm in. Recently started about a month ago. So a little bit of some transition and stuff like that, but kind of starting to find my feet right now, within the role. Prior to that, I was at Salem State University for almost 8 years. And since I was in the career services space there as well. So no stranger to, this conversation around the career services elements to things. And I'm also a proud dad of two boys, two young boys, one that'll be 4 next week, and another one that's 2.5. And so we're kind of really in the thick of it, if you will. But it's something that, every day is a new day, new adventure. And it's something that, to me, I would say, being a dad is the best job in the world.
So, Joe, let's go ahead and get started. I think when we had our conversation, was it over the summer or was it in the spring? Because I would say, what has this new fall been like with, school starting and the
Yeah.
kids? I don't know. What is it like? And see, I can't even pronounce Massachusetts correctly. I probably mispronounced it, whatever. You know,
I should say that too. Resident of the North Shore of Massachusetts as well.
there
So
you go. Thank you. But
born and
yeah,
raised.
what's the fall been like?
Yeah, the fall's been a little bit crazy for us, and the a couple reasons behind that. Number one, obviously, starting a new job, that's never easy. Adding in a commute to that, working from home a couple days, just a general life change. So anytime something like that happens, it's always a challenge. Plus, my oldest son, who like I said is going to be 4 next week, started preschool, and so that's been an adjustment for us in our schedules. Thankful that I have a amazingly supportive wife who is kind of on top of things, who has to adjust her work schedule daily, weekly, to accommodate and to drop off, pick up, and all that stuff. And add on to that we have an amazing support system as well from our parents who watch our boys, during the times that we both have work and things like that. So it's been a little bit crazy. And then in Massachusetts too, we've had some kind of crazy weather this past week. Like last night we lost our power, just, one thing after the other, it seems like. But it's definitely been kind of a whirlwind this fall. And I can't believe we're already at the end of October. It feels like it's gone by really quick. But I'm looking forward to kind of getting into the holiday season, things slowing down a little bit and being able to kind of, relax and enjoy the family a little bit more.
So, with that being said, with the fall and the school and stuff, how do you maintain balance? And I think we just had Bob on earlier, and he's
Yeah.
wearing those hats, and I love that. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna roll that in. How are you wearing those two hats of being very present, particularly present in a new job, and then being present at home?
Absolutely. It's a challenge. Not going to lie to start, it's definitely a challenge. I think that for myself, for me, family always comes first. So that's always number one priority in anything that I'm doing. And so what I've done is, just practically speaking, I've been able to, kind of go in early, leave a little bit early to make sure that I am home to spend some time with the kids when I am working, on campus. Kind of trying to balance my time when I'm at home, working from home, making sure that number one, I'm getting my work done, dedicating the time I need to, but also in the time that I don't, I'm not continuously checking email. I'm not continuously trying to respond to things, that I am present. I'm in the moment, and I'm spending time with my kids, and my wife, so it's a challenge. But it's one of those things that I think that, once you get into a routine, it tends to get a little bit easier, I think, and adjustments are always have to be made. But, for the most part, we've kind of done a good job, I think, of making those adjustments. And I think for me, it's, I know Bob had alluded to this a little bit. And like I just said, it's really about shutting down when when the work day is done, it's done, and that becomes your family time. And, you try to not let things kind of overtake your mind and really, distract you from, kind of what you're doing. And fortunately, the kids are at an age now that because they're young, it's a little bit crazy. They don't really know fully what's going on. And so I think that, in the moment when I'm around, it's just kind of the way it is, and so I think, what I would say is I just try to take it day by day. That's all, you try to take it. And there are some days where you say, you know what, I got to dedicate a little bit more time to what I'm doing at work or not, and maybe there's other days I'm like, you know what, it's kind of a slower day. Let me make sure that I use sign off when I'm supposed to sign off, and I can kind of, put my attention elsewhere.
I ain't gonna lie. Okay, so I have my email on my phone, and I'm pretty bad at this. I'm probably trash. So, let's be honest to yourself. How do you shut down? Do you have give some tips? Do you actually don't have your email on your phone, or I don't know. I'm just pretty sure probably everyone in this conversation tonight is probably better than me at this. I'm turning
It's
these two
hard.
different hats
No,
because
you
my head is. I don't know if you know me, but my mind is always going like a record with all these different ideas and stuff. So, talk about that.
yeah, I don't have a secret per se. It's one of those things where, I do have the email on the phone, but for whatever reason, I do whatever I can and to make sure that it's, when I'm in the moment with my kids, that stuff is kind of not at the forefront, and sometimes it's about putting the phone down and kind of walking away from it, if you will. And trying to let those other distractions kind of take over, if you will, you know what I mean, in terms of what we're doing with the kids, whether we're playing, whether we're outside, whatever it could be, trying to separate myself as best as possible. And, truthfully, there are days when it's hard to do that. And then, you'll be kind of there and you're looking at your phone and, but I think that, you just have to, you deal with it and you figure it out. Like I said, not one secret per se. It's just more of just trying to be in the moment and realize that, what, this can wait. Let's put it away. Let's focus on what I need to be focusing on now.
So you spoke about day by day. I
Yeah.
don't know, like certain people, I know my wife needs that debrief, or so do you have like a morning kind of thing, like the shared Google Calendar and who's doing this, and you just break down the day and then the day gets started, or how does that work, that day by day
Um,
mindset that you have?
so I think now we try to just communicate as much as we can, typically the night before, because I'm usually out the door pretty early. During the pandemic, when we were, you know, I was working at home full time, and obviously my wife was here, and we had the kids. It was pretty much an everyday occurrence of, okay, what's your schedule looking like today? What's mine looking like today? When can you, jump up, come down, whatever it is?
Yeah.
When do you definitely need coverage right now? When do you have that meeting and everything? And it's so, I think it's about that steady communication, being upfront, being open about things. And then, on the other side of it too, at least having the flexibility from folks at work. And I know, in the thick of it last year, I was working for Salem State. I had a great support system from the university. My supervisor was super helpful, like understood where I was coming from on things, and granted me some of that flexibility and freedoms. But, as an example, like in the month of April and May in 2020, there was one day a week I had to take a day off. And it was just, I was like, I can't balance both of these things with two jobs, right? My job, my wife's job, and having to have, having the kids here, full time without any childcare. It was just something that you had to do. And I think that, having that flexibility, the understanding of folks that were like, hey, whatever you have to do, let's figure it out. Let's make sure it works. And I was able to do that. So it was nice. And I kind of mentioned the day by day thing. I know it sounds very cliche, but it is something where I try my best to do that. I'm an introvert, so I have to shut down at the end of the day. It's not something where I can kind of keep going. I try my best in the mornings to run if I can, or do some sort of exercise to get my, to just kind of center myself, if you will, to kind of get my mind cleared. That I find that really helps me a lot. But so I'd say to anybody that's thinking about this is like, what do I do? What works for you? That's what I would say, the most is really what works for you, and do that and find ways to kind of incorporate them into your day. For me, it's, do I have to get up a little bit earlier to do something like that? Maybe on the weekends too. Yeah, I do. But for me, it's worth it because it makes me feel better.
So I was thinking about this too, and obviously these questions just come off the top of my head, but as you know, we're in a very female dominated industry, higher ed, or particularly career services, and then always a lot of the moms. And sometimes it feels like the dads, like even the moms be talking, you're like try to jump into the conversation, you're like, never mind, like I shouldn't even said anything. Let me jump out
Yeah.
of this. Let me jump out of this conversation. So can you talk about, I mean, have you found a way to find spaces, or how do you do that for yourself? I mean, for me,
Yeah,
I'll be transparent. For me, was this, like connecting with other men.
other guys.
In
Yeah,
higher ed.
yeah. I think it's really helped. I mean, the involvement in an organization like Eastern Ace has really helped to be able to kind of bounce ideas and just get advice from other people who are kind of experiencing the same thing as me, meeting other dads and things of that nature. I've been fortunate though in my jobs where I've had a little bit of a mix. When I first started at Salem State, though, I was the only guy in the office, and that took a little bit of getting used to, but I found that I would join the conversations when it was appropriate. And then there are other times where maybe it was kind of Joe would maybe take the back seat, and it is what it is, but I think it's all about respect, right? And really kind of understanding folks, and kind of meeting people where they are, and I think that was that particularly the team I had at Salem State at the beginning. We were all very respectful of each other. We shared personal things with each other because there was that level of comfort, which was nice. And so, when you find yourself in an environment like that, it makes it a little bit easier to adjust and into experience things like that, even if you are the only guy as part of the office. Towards my end of the time at Salem, there were some other guys that did join the office, so it was nice. We had a nice balance. So there would be times where maybe we'd be talking about sports and things like that, as a way to escape some of the craziness, but again, I think it was good because we had a nice group and a nice culture that was really open and accepting of everybody.
So this is gonna be my last question before your gym
Sure.
question. But one thing I've
Sure.
always, and I found this too, is that the skills of being a good father or had bled over into my career and actually
Yeah.
made me a better person. I think I've actually gotten
Yeah.
better. I had a little bit more direction when I became a dad. I honestly, uh, my career has been not that solidified until Mason, and I think that correlated with
Yep.
being a father. So, can you talk about that, like the skills of being a father and how that bled over into work, and vice versa? How career services
Yeah.
actually made you a better father?
Yeah, so a couple of things I think are really important around that. Number one is communication. I think in the work that we do, we have to communicate effectively. And I think as a dad, particularly when you're raising young kids, it's about communicating what's right, what's wrong, and kind of being as direct as possible and in a way that's going to be understanding and empathetic and patient and calm, right? And sometimes there are instances where maybe the stress kind of takes over. But I think that's a really helpful one. I think time management too. Our jobs are very fast paced at times. We're wearing multiple hats, like you said at the top of the show, right? And so I think being able to effectively manage your time is really helpful. And then when it comes time to being a dad, I think it's an essential skill. You have to be able to manage that time effectively. Whether it's, hey, we're going to do this now, we're going to go outside for this amount of time, but we got to make sure we come back in for lunch or come back in and get ready for dinner. I'm going to cook dinner, let's figure out what we're going to do during this time, whatever that might be. So I think that, those are the skills that are really intertwined, whether it's, work to dad or dad to work, I think it's things that are super important in all this stuff. So it's funny because, people don't think career services, right? There's not a lot of correlation, but it is. I mean, we're in this profession, I think, to help others and help see them succeed, right? And offer our advice and share our experiences. And I think that goes hand in hand with being a parent. You try to think about your experiences you had as a kid. What can I do to make the lives better for my children? Bob mentioned it. I'm also a first gen student, or I was a first gen, student or college grad now, obviously. So it was one of those things where I think I'll take those experiences and I'll be able to implement that stuff during our conversations once we get to that point. And so I think that, I guess to kind of wrap up what we're saying, it's just, yeah, there's a lot of correlation between the two. And it's funny how, the skills I've built as a result of the work I've done have really transferred over to my role as a dad.
Well, that's wonderful. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I think I'm just gonna say this for everybody. So your gym, if this is the last thing, you have to just drop one gem on us and
Yeah.
bounce, which you are gonna bounce,
Yeah.
you get some sleep, you know what I'm saying? I know that you want that. But the one gem that you would like to impart on the listeners and viewers or whatever before you head out today.
Yeah. So let me say this as this is an amazing quote that I heard from my neighbor at the beginning of the pandemic. We were just talking about how he's a dad, has his boy's a little bit older. We were just kind of chatting about being a dad and having young kids and stuff. And he said, a friend of mine said it best like this. He goes, parenthood is like this: long days, short years. The time goes by so quick, but when you're in the moment, it doesn't feel like that at all, right? There are some days where you're like, when you put them down to bed, you're like, wow, how did I survive, right? And then you look back and say, wow, they're already this many years old. I can't get over this. I can't believe my son's going to be 4. It's crazy. So I think the best advice I can give is really just to kind of take it day by day, right? We talked about this before, but really try to live in that cliche, enjoy the moments, do your best. There are some days that are going to be harder than others, and that's okay. As someone who's always hard on themselves, try not to be as hard on yourself. Understand that there's a lot of other people that are going through it too. And if you have to, utilize that support system, have those conversations. But I think that the best way to do it is just really kind of living that day by day.
I love it. Well, Joe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for all you do. We love to connect. I think you need to bring that show that you had at Salem to your new place. I enjoyed being on your show. I think you're a super creative dude. And, knock on wood, hopefully life is good and we'll see each other in person and chop it up.
Let's
there
hope
too,
so.
In Atlantic
Absolutely.
City.
Let's hope so.
Drinks on Bob.
Always good to connect. Always good to connect with you. Really enjoyed the conversation again. Thanks again for having me. Again, like I said, an elite company here 2 times on the Positive Philter podcast. So I really enjoyed it. And I know we'll stay in touch. And like you say, hopefully we'll see each other in person, in Atlantic City.
All right. I love it. All right. Thank you,
All right.
Joe. All right. So next up, we have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Walter Tarver III. Shout out to the thirds out there, similar to myself. I met this gentleman actually through Bob recently online. So we haven't met in person, but we're going to meet in person and chop it up as well. But before, let me just get right into it. I'm going to bring Walt on. Hello, sir.
Hey, what's going on, Phil? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I know you got the Bills Mafia. Did you jump through a table and body slam the table?
Don't do tables. That's cultural, brother. That's cultural. Tables.
Just elbow. So before we get started, can you just give the listeners and viewers a little explanation about yourself, and then we'll go right into it.
Sure. So, good evening, everyone. Again, Walter Tarver. Currently, I'm the Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs at Stockton University, which is in Southern New Jersey. I have about 20 years prior experience in career services. That's been a bulk of my career. So I've elevated from being a coordinator all the way up to being a director before assuming the role of assistant dean and then my current role of AVP. And higher ed has pretty much been most of my career. Done some retail stuff here and there, but the bulk of my career has been in higher ed.
And then, the fatherhood part.
Say that again.
The father, don't you have kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm following your prompt, brother. I'm following.
It's a kid show. We want to know about the kids. We're talking about fathers and career services.
Yeah. So, 11-year-old daughter. What Joe was just saying previously hit me because I can't believe that she's 11 years old. But 11-year-old daughter, it's our only one. We got started a little late in life, but hey, better late than never. But that's our only, and that's our princess.
I love it. So as you look at your daughter, especially with certain ceilings that have been on, certain gender careers, what is your daughter, you think, interested in right now? And how do you reaffirm, that career, or not career, but interest, whether, I don't know, like, is she into science or technology, and things that you just foster right now?
I think she's big into the technology, which, a lot of these kids are. She's always glued to a device. We went from one device to, I think she has 3 or 4 now. She actually has more devices than me. But, that's her thing, man. And we try to balance it a little bit, but different generation. I was a latchkey kid that sat in front of the TV with my daughter. I don't know if there's a formal term for it, but she's glued to that iPad, iPhone, Kindle, you name it, she has it. But I'd say technology is probably her jam right now.
And so how do you so as I said earlier to Bob, I'm like, my mind is already spinning. Maybe sometimes I gotta stop projecting, like as parents do, project careers and stuff on them. Like, oh man, my son loves math. Man, he gonna be a scientist, So, but at the same time, I am definitely fostering that, quizzing him sometimes. I ask him random math questions. He knows square roots already at 6. And I'm just really crazy about that stuff. So knowing that your daughter likes technology, is there, beyond the devices, ways that you feed that interest? And do you already start trying to, like me earlier, see careers out of that? Or are you just let me just, I'll let her be a kid. As a kid is a kid kind of
I
thing.
let her do her thing. I got caught up for a little bit, and then, I know most of us on here have had conversations about sports quite often. You're like, come on, let's go sign up. She's not interested in some of that stuff. So I just let her do her, man. We're not hitting her over the head with too much right now.
So I said this earlier, and I asked this to all the people that work. I mean, we're in the business of education, and we've seen it. Kind of going back to the same question I asked Bob about the value that you think for your daughter or any child, is it college or bust? Or do you see, like, now that you see the bigger picture, no, college not for everyone, and all these different things? Explain that kind of mindset.
Yeah, I've definitely evolved over time. Certainly I was raised in a household where, my parents were from the segregated South. So they didn't have a lot of opportunities. So that was one of the things that was emphasized in my household. So certainly growing up with the ideology of, yeah, it's college or bust. But being in this profession, we've all had those moments where we probably come to the realization that college is not for everybody. We've had many conversations as career services professionals, especially, where sometimes you have to have have you considered a vocational, school or trade school? Not to burst anyone's dreams, but, I think that when you become an experienced professional, you recognize easily that some students are just not meant to be in the space that they are in college. And to continue on is almost a disservice, because you're talking to someone who most likely may not even finish just because they're not engaged enough to really get through. They're interested in things aside from the academics and, planning for a career. And that's a tough, conversation to have. But as I've aged and gotten more experience, you definitely say, hey, that's not the only path. And I'm not ashamed to say that I definitely was like, man, you got to go to college. Come on, man, you have to come to college. But it's not for everyone. And we know that there's many successful people who have not taken the college route. I think we've been very fortunate. It's been a match that has aligned well with us and, many people that we know, but it's not for everyone.
So I love that. I mean, I actually, just learned that about your parents being from the segregated South. And maybe I want to explore that a little bit. How do you
Sure.
think your values from your parents, like, I like this twofold. How do you think the values from your parents influence you as a father? So that's your normal parental style. And how do you think the values of your parents influence you as a professional at work in that career services space? So speak to both of those.
Yeah, I think one thing about me too is an important part of this conversation is I'm an only child. So when I go back to saying, hey, I kind of let her find her way, let her do her thing. My parents gave me that autonomy to kind of figure out who I was as a young boy, what my interests are, and allow me to explore a lot of different things. So they gave me enough freedom to learn things for myself and to explore. But, they were pretty strict. I grew up in a time where they were pretty strict. And I think because of some of the things they had experienced growing up the way they did, that was, a majority of the reason why they were so strict with me. They had seen a world that I had not seen. So, we kind of experienced this new open integrated society at the same time, right? They have a child. This is new to them. My family's again from the South, and we're up in New York State. So that's new for them. And now they have this little black boy, right? In this
Yep.
world that they've only known segregation and, racism and hardship. And how do we let our child loose in this world, knowing that it might not be safe for them? And that's one of the things that I grapple with my daughter, especially having a little girl. We joke all the time, like, hey, meet me at the shooting range, right? So we can, make sure we're good to go when the boys come calling, right? So it's tough to let go. I always thought that I would be one of those types of parents that, let her do what she wants to do, let her fall, do all of that. But I find myself catching her. I think I've spoiled her to some extent, which I never thought I would do with my child, but I have. I will admit that. But she's my only, and my life has been different from my parents' lives, and I hope that her life is different and better than mine and her mom. So it definitely influences a lot of old school values. I believe in, manners and picking up behind yourself, all of that type of stuff. So yeah, very much influenced way I was raised, earning things. but also kind of school first, right? So, I was big into sports, but, my mom especially was hardcore. No academics, no sports. So, not that my daughter's into sports, but it's like, hey, you want to play with this iPad for the rest of the evening? Well, where's the homework? Right. So there's definitely a direct connection to how I was brought up and, how we're raising her. Wife's a little bit more liberal, but I'm a little more strict when it comes to earning things.
Did you hear that growing up? Like when you ask for something, like, do you have that kind of money? Like, can I get some
Oh, of
McDonald's?
course.
You got McDonald's money? I was like,
Of
dang,
course.
like,
You have Nike money. Nike's came
yes,
since
yo,
elementary
that was a
school.
go-to line. I was like, no, but you got the money. What you mean? Like, you pay
Exactly.
for it.
Exactly.
So how did, but then, okay, now all those values, your parents, how did it influence you as a professional?
Professionally, definitely hard work, just watching my parents grind, and my mom is actually quite judgmental whenever I'm like, hey, I'm taking off tomorrow. Are you sick? What's wrong with you? Like, makes me feel guilty about taking a day off because she just didn't take days off. Right. So it definitely makes me feel a little bit guilty in terms of how I manage my time because, the workplace is so much different. And my mom was in the healthcare profession. You can't just take off, whenever you want to and don't have the type of freedom to kind of float like we do as higher ed professionals. But definitely watching that work ethic, going to work sick, working overtime, doing all the extra stuff and kind of watching that balance. Right. So, my mom makes fun of us because she's like, I went to work and worked a double shift and I still had dinner and the laundry was still done. And you guys, you come here and you're doing takeout and, I'm over at your house and it's like, you guys aren't balancing things properly. Right. So seeing that, it puts some pressure on you certainly to be, this well-balanced, juggling work properly, juggling your responsibilities as a spouse, as a parent. But the world is much different. It was much different and not as traditional in terms of the values, right? Where, mom's responsible for the meals and the household stuff. And, dad came home and kicked up with a beer, right? We don't live in that time anymore. So while I was raised in that environment, I don't really adhere to those typical gender mores. I'm the cook in the house, for example. I'm the neat freak. I'm the domestic one in the house. So while it has influenced and I've observed that, I think the times have changed so drastically. And a lot of it really has to do with our schedules. My wife and I are on opposite schedules. So just by default, I'm on dinner, I'm on bath, I'm on homework, so much different. Definitely an influence, but very different.
I was about to say one time, and I don't know if we could probably speak to this, but about that work ethic and grinding in two shifts, that old school mindset. But I think especially with my parents being achievers that they are, I had this mindset that, and it's probably race related too, that if you're black, you got to work twice as hard.
Oh
And
yeah, man. If I
that
had a
was,
dollar for every time I heard that.
I heard that all the time, and I don't know if that it it was one of those advices to me that kind of like sometimes it worked and sometimes it made it was damaging or like, so it worked in the sense that I'm grinding and going hard, but also then I'm not taking days, I'm burning out, or
Hmm.
I also, like, it's not saying I don't trust people, but I feel like I gotta do this and I got no time to really take off and do things.
Hmm.
So I don't know, I think that's influenced me, but I've worked on it a little bit too. I'm working on that, actually not greatly successful, but I'm working on it better, of this mindset that, like, I'm not this measuring stick, and this measuring stick is not directly tied to my racial identity. That my honestly, that they were correct though. My parents did have to do that, and
Hmm.
so when they gave that advice, it was their experience, but they had to do that because
Yep.
of things that they're going to. But can you speak? I mean, you match that a little bit, or you think about that as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. I say for it takes a while to get out of that mindset. Definitely the earlier part of my career, like always feeling like I have to prove something, always hearing those voices echoing. Don't forget, you
Mhm.
might be feeling sick today, but you can't afford to take this day. You just got to go in and suck it up because if you don't go, then you're going to fall behind. They're going to think this of you and you have to show them, right? A lot of pressure there. It definitely drove me all the way through school, no question. And it drove me in most things that I did. But then you kind of come to this realization, and you'll hit it one day, trust me. Yeah, you're like, you know what? While I respect that, and they were right for that time period, what I'm doing speaks for itself and it stands alone. I am working hard. I'm a competent professional. I have value. I am on the same level as my peers, if not above. Um, so I think the generational shift in the times have changed as such that we don't carry that burden around as much, but it definitely is with us throughout education, that journey, and through the early part of our careers. Thank God I don't feel that way on a daily basis now. Managing everything else is tough enough, but I definitely did for a majority of my career. And it has its moments now that it creeps in, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what room you're in, what space you're in, right? You feel like, oh, I'm in here with the provost and the president, so now mom's voice is back in your ear, right?
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
saying, wait a minute, I'm here for a reason. I'm in
Yeah.
this room for a reason, right? I don't have
Yeah.
to really prove anything to anybody. I just need to represent who I am.
But then on the flip side, even with my parents' voices, and I think you can speak to this too, I still catch myself telling myself now, these kids don't know how easy they have it.
Oh,
like, so I've heard those voices too. And when I say that these kids, I'm also saying my children, but also these college kids and the
mhm.
students I'm working with. They're taking this for granted, and they got the internet, and I'm like going on like they could get anything when they're not getting straight A's,
Yeah.
like da, da, da. So it's this weird paradox. Like I'm in this middle ground, kind of like J. Cole, the middle child feeling, where I'm like, I'm not the I'm not the kids no more. I'm not the youth. You know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
I'm also not my parents' generation. I'm stuck in this weird limbo. Um, do
And
you feel
as a
that?
parent, I find myself assessing all the time what type of parenting is happening in your household, right? Like we're judging our students to some extent.
Mhm.
I think more so when you become a parent. Before becoming a parent, I never thought how are they raising these kids. I never really thought at that level, but I'm like, where are they getting their values from now, right? Like because I'm Mr. Dad now, so
Yeah.
there's something missing in your upbringing, young man, young lady. So you
Tuck
definitely
your
become
pants,
a little bit
pull your
more
pants up. Yeah, yeah.
you
That
become
same
way more
mindset.
judgmental.
Yeah, I feel that. Like, no, I definitely feel that too. Like, and I think I spoke to that with Joe is about parent changed me, but also changed my lens of the world and changed.
Mhm.
And I think parent changed my lens of the world as a career person now. Like, I'm like thinking of these young people encouraging, like, oh man, they wasting their dad and mom's money or
Yep.
X, Y, and Z, or, you know, or I also had these conversations. I remember now thinking about those conversations when I meet a student and the student is bombing a class, right? And I asked that student, like, is this what you want to do? And they're like, no, my parents told me to pick this major. And then
Hmm.
I'm like in this weird space where I'm like, okay, I'm getting this advice about values and skills and like you could change your major. But then I go back and say, will I be that same way when my kid, if he was bombing, computer science, would I be that flexible and like laissez-faire? And I don't know yet because it's not happening. But I think
Our
about that.
kids are at a disadvantage with us being higher ed professionals. I will
Okay,
say
speak to
that.
that. Speak to that.
I think that as much as we might try to refrain from being so tough, we know way too much. And I mean, I picture myself sometimes like if I'm at orientation, I feel sorry for the career people. If I'm at orientation, I feel sorry for these academic deans because again, we have the cheat sheet, right? We know what's supposed to happen. We know what's supposed to be available. Um, so I think we have to harness that to some extent because that can create some pressure for our children as well. And so think about what we've accomplished, right? I have my doctorate, my wife has a law degree. Ugh, no pressure though, kid. No
Yeah,
pressure though, right?
no pressure. Yeah.
Um, and then on the flip side, neither my dad didn't have a high school diploma, my mom did, no college. So then the flip side was the pressure on me to be the one,
Mm.
right? So it's interesting how it's morphed over the generations to I need to set the example to here you go, kid. Good luck to you, top that, right? So it's interesting. It's definitely interesting and totally how I think I've approached my work has changed after I become a father in terms of the balance. I know I caught some of what Joe was talking about on the tail end, just kind of being in the space when you're there, right? If you're at work, be in that workspace. When you're at home with your family, be in that space. And that's one of the things that I've struggled with in this new role, because I'm on call like usually once a month. So I have the second phone that's attached to me, and we could be at Hershey Park. Well, maybe I don't venture off that far when I'm on call, but
Yeah. Yeah.
when we're doing things, it's hard sometimes not to be looking at that phone, and then I get incident reports. So I'm trying not to read the incident reports on a Saturday, because if it's important enough, I'll get a call. So between being a career advisor versus what I do now, it shifted in terms of balancing that time. It's no longer late nights working an event or going in early to set up for a career fair, but it's now always having to be available. So it's a little bit different.
So, I could go on. We could have a whole show, but, we're going to get to our next guest. But as I've done with every guest, if this was your, your thing, your gym, please, what would you share? What's your one gym you want to share with the listeners and audience tonight?
Yeah. And I think I just stated it. Be present. There's been a lot of times where I've been checking email and like, oh, you know what? They're getting dressed. Let me try to knock this out real quick. Let me get some of these emails out of the way, and set up a schedule, right? Set up a schedule for yourself. My family, I'm the Nighthawk. So if I'm up still and I absolutely have to do work, I try not to do it when they're awake. I try to do it when it's just me, but be present, enjoy things. Like Joe nailed it. My daughter was just 2 years old. She's 11 years old now. And I feel like I missed a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Well, all these gentlemen, drinks on Bob, not on me, but drinks on Bob when we all get together. Definitely going to have to do that someday. I mean, you got to come through Atlantic City. We all got to get together.
I'll be there.
Okay, good. So then definitely drinks on Bob. This is perfect. This is really working out perfectly. And it's on the podcast. He's not even listening. He gone. So we know it. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I'm jealous that the Buffalo Bills is doing better than the Skins, but I think any team is doing better than us. So continue to have success and have a great season and happiness.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having me, Phil.
No problem. All right, take care. All right, so that was great. And so, man, this has been a series. This actually I don't know, I might do this more often. This has been great, different perspectives. But we're going to get to the next guest. I'm joined by Mr. Noah Simon. Now, funny thing is, this is the first time we seen each other face to face. We've been texting. We've been going back and forth about his beloved Jets. I've been trolling him. I've been seeing what he's been doing. Honestly, organically, I've heard his name multiple times. I think we most likely have been at the same conference, especially if you went to one in Reston. But, this has been great. And so we're going to bring him on, and we're just going to get it. We're going to get this rock and rolling. I feel like saying rock and rolling. Hello, Mr. Simon. How you doing, Mr. Noah?
I'm doing great.
You got the thing on. All right.
I'm in now, Phil. I'm in. And I really do appreciate being here tonight. Was thrilled to get the invite, and I could listen to the three guys and the guy coming on last, and certainly not least. I could listen to those guys all night. I think come Atlantic City, you just put out a couch, you host us, and we go for hours.
Yeah, we're doing it. Oh, yeah, dang, you're right. Like, I'm just bringing my equipment. I got the mics, all that. It's going down. Yeah. So, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, and then we're going to get this started, get this rock and rolling.
So Noah Simon, I am currently the Director of Career and Professional Development at the University of Albany in upstate New York. Been in that role for 6-7 years, been at the university for about 15 years already, hard to believe. Prior to that, 8 years on the private side doing career work with corporate, really interesting work, and got into that right out of college. And then made that transition over to UAlbany. And on the personal side, married to my wife almost 20 years coming up in soon. And 2 kids, a son age 13 and my daughter age 10.
This is also, so for me, I love this because it's two things, twofold. One, I'm looking at people that I look up to as presidents at Eastern Ace and career professionals, and wow, that's their trajectory. And also, as Joe said, I'm looking at the people when I blink, and I'm gonna have these teenage kids. I was like, I'm not ready for that. So can you speak to that in both spots? Can you speak to like how your career blinked and you are where you are in your career, and how you close your eyes and blink and your kids are where you are?
Well, all of us who've been at universities for an extensive period can tell you the same stories. We we work with these individuals. We meet their kids one day. We turn around, we see them the next day, and all of a sudden they're seniors in high school. You know, I started at Albany. I had no kids. Now I'm talking to people. They're like, your son's 13, your daughter's 10. And I'm watching it day by day. And, you know, Joe put it out and Walt followed up with it. People come into my office and you see a couple photos that are many years apart. And they're like, what happened here? How old is he now? How old is she? Time moves fast. Time moves really fast in higher ed. Faster than most. So, it's been interesting. It certainly is. There is no way to describe how fast these years go. When Walt said his daughter's already 11, I mean, I've known Walt since before his daughter was born. So to hear that just blows my mind. And it's with so many of so many of our Eastern Ace friends whose kids are in college, graduating college. The time moves quickly. So you cherish it and you try to make the most of it.
So speaking, I always think about this, like, the mid-level professionals, like that pivotal moment. And I know sometimes it's affected women a little bit more, like when they're trying to rise in their career and they have kids and they might have to stop their career. And then, for certain dads, they don't, or whatever. So can you, going back into the time machine, when you were concurrently trying to do your career and started to be a father, what was some of those transition things like, and how was that, and what pivotal decisions you had to make that, like, I need to stick with this school or whatever that happened there or whatever?
Phil, you got to look at who you're working for. And I happened to come into Albany under one of the most wonderful bosses I could have asked for, a gentleman who was very involved in Eastern Ace back in his day by the name of Philippe Abraham. And he was a family first guy. And I remember, and I've told the story a million times, my first son was about to be born. And I said, Philippe, I want to take off a week. I said, I'm going to take off a week, spend it with my wife, my son, and then I'll be back. And then I'll probably take another week later. He goes, absolutely not. He goes, you're going to take off 2 weeks when your son's born. He goes, and then you'll come back and you'll take off whatever else you need. And I was like, no, I'm a week. He's like, you're going to take off 2 weeks. I think after a week, my wife was ready to send me back to work. But and you've got to find that place that values. And I truthfully believe, I'm fortunate, my wife's fortunate, we both work at places that truly value that work-life integration. I said it to you, I sent a text to you today. I ran out the door. I met with my boss till 3:30. And then I was like, I got to go. My son's got a football game a half an hour away. And she's like, go, get out of here. And it's just being in the right situation. And I recognize not every workplace offers that. Not everyone gets that opportunity. So I've been very fortunate. And I've tried to lead from that perspective as well.
I love
it's got to
that.
be family first.
I love that. So as I said earlier, maybe expectations. It's funny, concurrently, all the guests before have been first gen. I'm not, which is interesting. I've always had these perceptions of first gen. What about you? Are you a first gen college student or not? And if not, what was the expectations of your career from your parents? Either way. I'm
not. Both my parents are. Both my parents are first gen. My mother actually came here at 5 years old from, spending 5 years in a displaced persons camp. Her family escaped Poland in 1939. So we're talking, my mom has very little patience and or sympathy for anyone. My father, on the other hand, is about as warm and a human being as you could imagine. So I took lessons from both of them. And that meshing style has allowed, for certain times where, you need to be a little more, a little harder, but both of them worked, they grinded, they both grew up in New York City, really in the 1950s, 60s, had the fortune to go to City College in New York when it was free, so they took advantage of that. They knew how important it was to get their education. So they were fortunate and not fortunate. They worked hard. It was that set of values. And I heard you and Walter talking about, prior, how our parents look at us and say, oh, you don't know, that follows every generation. We look at our kids and say, you're lazy. Our parents looked at us and said the same thing. So It's I think certainly college was the expectation, but they were supportive in whatever. And I had to learn that. I've told the story. I have an economics degree from my undergraduate. I grew up about a half an hour north in New York City. And I thought everyone where I grew up, you went off to college, you got the degree, you went back, you went into New York City, and you made as much money as possible. And I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And when I realized I didn't have to follow that path and my parents were going to support me no matter what I did, it really changed things for me. And it allowed me to pursue something I truly love and have been able to really enjoy every day of my life.
I love that. I love that your parents support it. And I love that your parents, I was thinking about that too, man. You was on the path for the Wolf of Wall Street life, you know what I'm saying? Going in there and making that money. And I can say the same thing, like for not say doctor, lawyer, bust, but my parents, my mom was a doctor. My mom was a Army doctor. My dad was a 30-year Army colonel. And so I had this shape of like what careers were. And they legit didn't know what I was doing when I went to higher ed. Like that wasn't something they thought of. But now that I've carved my own path, they get it. But can you speak to that? Like, do they kind of know, like, I'm going to be a higher ed professional? I don't think I even call my parents don't even know what that means. I just think I work at that college. You know what I'm saying? That's what they say. Oh, you work up at the college. So how about that for you?
It's funny. I actually grew up, my father and mother did career work, not in higher ed. They built their career around career.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up in that. Truly the background is he's coached leaders for years. I'm 44 years old. My father, I still get on the phone. He's in his 70s. He's like, you're 44, you're a director. He's like, so what's your next step? What are you doing now? And the same things we're asking our students. He's like, so what's the next step for you? And I'm like, well, I'm really building things here, and even still coaching me through as here, the same stuff we do, I do with my children, we do with our students. He's still asking me the same questions that he's probably so. They love the work I do. They love where I do it. For them, we have a heavy population from New York City, so I'm working with a lot of the students who grew up exactly where they grew up, and they love hearing those stories. So, but that never leaves. That never leaves. Your parents never stop. I'm never going to stop. You're never going to stop. Our kids are going to be in their 40s. We're going to still be trying to give that advice we think, they need.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. So how do you, and I'm working on this now, how do you separate, like I said, not personalizing a student's decision similar to how you wouldn't personalize a child's decision? So for instance, you give this student the best advice ever. You feel like this is lock solid and they just don't follow it. And then you take that personal, not understanding that they got life circumstances. One, they have their own mind to make their own decisions. And two, maybe certain things are not for everyone. And in the same way with your kids, you tell them everything from your experiences. He's like, man, this is lock solid. You just follow me. It's going to happen, but they don't. How do you separate that, separate or not personalize that in both spaces, as for the students or in the parent space?
You can only do what you can do. You're going to offer that advice. Here's the truth, though. I've been humbled. And I've, with things I've said, I walked into this industry, and all those on the call have heard me say this, with a huge ego. I'm coming from corporate. How hard can and I've been humbled. And if there's people listening, they'll be like, yeah, Nova's a jerk when he, but I came in with an ego. That has mellowed much over the years. I might still have a little bit of one, but people are going to make their decisions. You're going to offer the best advice. I always tell a student, you're not coming into my office and you're going to leave with me telling you this is the career. I'm going to give you my thoughts. I'm going to listen. I'm going to ask questions. You're going to make your decisions. I'm going to support. If you say this is your decision, how can we best get you to where you want to be? And at the end of the day, some walk out of the office and say, this is great, and I'm going to follow that. And others walk out of the office and say, you know what? He was a good guy to chat with for a half an hour, but I'm not buying what he said, so I'm going to go do my thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So you can only do what you can do.
So one thought that popped in my head too. Actually, now I love when I just get random questions as you're talking.
I
So
get it.
take us back. So take us back to the old school, like Noah, like that. Where was that shift? Where the chip on your shoulder or whatever you call it, the confidence
Yeah.
of that
Yep.
style, and what particularly humbled that? And was that chip on your not chip on your shoulder, but that confidence was also that shift being a parent too help with that softening or whatever you
There's
transitioned to?
some of that. There's some of that. I honestly looked at it. I came from Phil. I came from more of a recruiting environment. I
Mhm.
came from the companies I worked with basically looked and said, we're looking at the placement numbers. Within 6 months, you better have X number placed. So I came into higher ed and I figured that's got to be the model.
Mm.
What other model can metrics of success be? And then I came in with this, look, it's about getting these students. They're looking at our numbers and our numbers drive a lot, but the career exploration, the getting to them early, the work that was needed to be done that, and I still don't think is fully understood. And that's when I met so many incredible people in this space who educated me, and a lot of them have been on this call tonight. And realizing how much work had to be done to get the outcomes. I was working with individuals who had been through the whole process. They just needed to go to where they needed to go. I had to help them get the job. Well, here in higher ed, we're taking them from the beginning steps of, I've got no idea where I want to be, what I want to do. This is a cyclical, long-term process that can't just be, we take you and we fit you here. So really learning about higher ed, really learning how the pieces fit, and really trying to create this career integration amongst the university and realizing how much work it actually took to get us where we need to be. And we're working at every day. And truthfully, Eastern Ace, and just working with some of the tremendous professionals who I'm fortunate enough to call colleagues, and I've learned from so much. So, but there were certainly points, but definitely softened, and the kids certainly helped that.
So I will talk. So my last question before we get into is like, I want to ask the same question I think I asked, I believe it was Joe. How has being a father, how has the skills overlap? Like being a good father and being a good supervisor, boss, or career professional. How have you seen like, wow, the patience that I use as a dad was really good to be patient at work. I think I just gave you one. I don't know, but
Now,
can you give me some examples of that?
What's funny? My poor wife lives with me and my 2 kids who all share the exact same personality.
Yes.
My wife is a kind, patient, warm, and no, she is very warm. She is and then I've got 2 kids and myself who are loud, don't stop talking, and aren't patient. I'm going to actually flip it. Everyone says the patience piece. I actually sometimes think my lack of patience helps because there's a sense of urgency. And sometimes I feel that's lacking. Sometimes I think it's great to be patient and you want to be patient, but sometimes you got to have a sense of urgency and you want to push and you want to say, well, you can't sit back on this all day. You've got to start making moves towards where you want to go.
Soulmate.
And it's the same with my kids.
Yeah. No, you're my soulmate. We got a joke. I call it hashtag prayers for Maggie. Nothing's wrong with Maggie. She lives with us, all 3, me and the boys. And so, man, you just nailed it. Like it is. I mean, there's a lot of personalities like they share with my wife, but my boys are like there's almost mini clones.
Oh yeah,
In my household.
it's the exact. And my poor wife, it's exactly. Our wives need to meet because the patience and kindness for 3 people who don't stop talking. And when she talks, it matters more than anybody because everything that comes out of her mouth, it adds value. The other 3 of us just talk to hear ourselves.
Yes. I love it. So we got the last guest, but I want to give everyone an opportunity. I love this. Everyone's been dropping great gems. So if this is your last thing you wanted to share with the listeners and viewers, what is your gem for tonight?
And this one comes from my wife, who constantly reminds me, because we all have those moments where the kids are driving us nuts. They do something, you scream, you get angry, and then you hold on to it or whatever. And my wife's like, you've got to let things go. And at work, you've got to let things go. There's stuff that happens and you're just, but you just get worked up. Let it go. Let it go. And at home, she's like, you're still holding on to that? Like, they fixed it. Like, just let it go. And it's one I'm really trying to work on. But I think it is, and the ones that were taken that were said prior were so critical. The being present, all that is so important. And for me, right now, it's constantly working on just letting things go, moving on, and letting it be.
I love it. I love it. Like, Let It Be. Wasn't that a Beatles song or something?
It was.
Yeah, look at me dropping gems. But no, first of all, thank you so much for spending your time tonight. And it's
Thank
also
you for having me.
as a introduction to each other. This has been great. I really appreciate you. And actually, like I said, I looked up to you from afar. I seen the thing you were doing, and then the fact that you're reciprocal to that made a lot of made me feel really good. I appreciate this so much.
Phil, I love, and I'm not just saying this, and I've reached out to you privately to say this. I love what you're doing for yourself, for the organization, for the industry, the innovation that's happening here. I really am honored to be on the show tonight and with the incredible guests that you have, and just keep it up. You're doing amazing work in this space.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Oh, sorry. Dang, I did the little quick thing. I always do that. I think I did that to Junior last time. But so we're gonna land this plane. We're gonna with the current man, of the night. Well, everyone's the man of the night, men of the night. But we're gonna land this plane with the current. Was it the Eastern A's president? I believe, or president elect. President elect. I'm not gonna get in trouble. I did last time. But we're gonna end this conversation with a good friend. Also, someone else I look up to. Well, honestly, I look up to everyone, but I also look up to this gentleman. We're gonna end it with Junior. So Junior, he's been a great person. I look up to him, see the things he's doing. I definitely had to have him on this show about being a father and the conversation and all this. So this is our last guest tonight. I thank you for all those that have been joining us and sticking with us throughout this night. And as I said earlier, this will be viewed later. So if you want to get this in full, I'll share it with everybody. Junior, the last man. Watching Chicago Fire.
Yeah.
I love it. So for the listeners, you're the last one, but tell us a little bit about yourself and let's get this show rock and rolling.
Perfect. So thank you for having me on. I've been tuning in and listening to everybody drop knowledge. Such good friends, folks that I've known in the career space forever. So Junior Delgado, director of the Career Center at Westfield State University in Westfield, Mass. And we're on the western end of Massachusetts. So we are an hour and a half west of Boston. We're actually closer to NOAA. So NOAA's about an hour and 15 minutes to the east of us, and we are about 45 minutes north of Hartford, Connecticut. So we sit right in the middle of a lot of places. I'm a first generation college student as well. I think some others had mentioned that. Also, I'm bilingual. Spanish is my first language. English came second. I grew up speaking Spanish in my home. I have been married. It's gonna be a long time, but I think it's a little over 23 years.
All right.
And I have an 8-year-old daughter. And then I have some cats that are in the background right now that are going bonkers.
The cat dad. I love it. I'm a dog dad, but cat dad.
The cats want to get in here right now. So there's one screaming, trying to climb a window.
I love it. And then Junior, you actually are a 2-time guest. You've been on my show before. And
Absolutely.
honestly, I want, can you share, I want you to share the story of how you got into career services, where you told me earlier, and I don't want to do super spoiler about looking up jobs in the paper. I'm only going to say that little nugget. You share that story because that was so powerful. And I think it's great to start the conversation.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I share about this story is that when you come from a family where let's just say money is missing and your family is poor, I went through an experience and I was fortunate. I'll say this: I'm very blessed and fortunate to have a mother and a father. And growing up, my father, it seemed like when I was in high school, freshman year through, I think, senior year, it seemed like every year he'd get laid off from work. And as the oldest child in the family, and as the person who was the translator for everything from the time I was 5 years old all the way through. It was my task to assist my father looking for work. My father primarily was a Spanish speaker, helping him fill out applications. And what's interesting is, and I never knew that this was going to tie into itself, I would get up and I had an interest in, and so for all the young folks, we used to do this with newspapers. And that's a real dying breed, but newspapers were the thing. And at that time, when you opened up a Sunday section of a newspaper, there had to have been at least anywhere from 14 to like 20 pages of jobs. And that's how you found work. And I had this strong interest in for whatever reason, in researching and looking for work to help. And I would get up sometimes at like 4:30, 5 in the morning, and I would walk probably like a half a mile to go to the convenience store to buy a newspaper, to bring it back and just relax for a couple of hours and just go through all the different jobs and say, okay, this is interesting. This is interesting. Oh, this is what they're looking for to help my father. And then when it came to filling out applications and whatnot, I also got tasked with going with him to fill out some of those applications and assist him as well in doing some of the translation. And then, you move time forward like 8 years, 9 years, and then all of a sudden I'm in the space of career. So it's really interesting. But newspapers, dime breed.
It's almost like you was, life groomed you for, working with people and professions. So, and also I think that was incredibly powerful to hear, I can't, and have a son help a dad. I don't know how that would felt, but that your dad and you built probably a bond and he trusted you and you had so when you were looking up jobs for your father, how would you know it was the good fit? Like you were looking at the strengths that your dad had. How did that work? Like, how would you make those connections for your father?
I think one of the thing that for him, my father was in manufacturing. So he's retired now, but manufacturing was his work. So anything that had to do with working in factories and manufacturing. And one of the messages that I got all along, I think growing up and going through high school is, this is what I do, but this is not what you're going to do. And so there was that push, like, don't do what I do, be better. And that was the message. Just move forward and certainly be able to achieve more things in life. I'm not working this hard, or I have not worked this hard to not have my kids move forward in life and do better than we did. And I think that's probably a motivating factor for a lot of families and a lot of parents and people in general, that I think that you want to take the generation before and push the generation ahead of that forward. And so I would say that my mission in life is that I want my child to do better than I did in life, so that when she grows up, she looks at that and says, my dad was this, my dad got that. And I was raised to achieve more and hopefully push her before, but also most importantly, whatever makes her happy in life.
So speaking to that, I think kind of touches upon what me and Walter said about that achievement, that the achievement devil or angel in our head, where achievement and being very career driven could be beneficial, but also it could be tipped over because, you burn yourself out and stuff, but you're doing it. You got the weight of the culture, the family on your back a little bit. Like, I got to do this for my people. So how do you manage that balance of the two talking heads?
I think that's an awesome question. But I'm going to say that, and it's probably been talked about all night, that there is a fine balance, and I think that you have to treat every person and every individual as their own person, because what might work for me may not work for my daughter as she gets older. And I think that one of the things that we even talk about with our own students across this space is, what is it that works for you? Where is the happiness? Where do you see that medium in happiness? And so to me, I think that if my daughter says, like, look, here's where I've gotten to, and this is what I'm doing, and maybe she decides to become an electrician. Maybe she decides to go into plumbing. Hey, you can't find plumbers right now. You can't find electricians. They're hard to get. And so if that's what makes her happy, and then for her, that's the achievement that she says, look, I've arrived and here I am and I'm doing what I love, then I'm going to support that 100%. So I think it's the same thing that we want for our students whenever we're counseling students, working with students, like, hey, what's going to work for you? Because you know it, when you counsel a student, their family member might be an attorney who's pushing that student to be an attorney. Mm-hmm. And that student hates law, hates anything about the profession, and they've got to find what makes them happy. So I think it's finding that balance and treating each person as an individual that has their own goals and they're striving for their own achievements.
So I love this story. And I didn't get a chance to ask this to all the other first gen college students. So for that experience, how did you navigate that space being the first? And did you, particularly as a male, look for male examples? So, for that advice, because I think for me, I'll be totally transparent. Finding similar identities to me to get advice from has been extremely helpful. I mean, I definitely take mentorship. I'll take mentorship when I get it. So don't get that twisted. I got white women mentors. I got all kind, different identities. But for me, particularly, it's been really attractive. Like I look for someone like me to do that. So can you speak to that?
Absolutely. And if I can go back to, I mean, I would say that my earliest mentor 100% was my father. And in the sense of teaching me about life and teaching me about how to be as an individual, how to treat people, how to be respectful, but also I learned my work ethic from him, because even to this day, he's retired and he doesn't stop. And so I'm like, damn, are you ever going to slow down? And I saw him earlier today and I said, and it was a rainy, cold day. And I was like, you can just go home and relax and lay down and take it easy. He said, for what? He goes, the winter's coming. I got to be out here right now. So I think that was my first mentor in life, but I would say that my first mentor that really, and I've had a lot of mentors and I continue to learn from people because I don't ever want to stop learning. And everybody that I interact with, and all of you, Noah, Walter, Bob, yourself, Joe, I learned something from everybody. I don't have all the answers to everything. And I think that's important. But my first mentor was a friend of mine who was a white gentleman who was older and talked about college and really started to plant those seeds. Like, hey, I know that you're supposed to go because your father's pushing you, but what do you actually know? And I said, I know nothing other than I hear other students talking about this thing called college and where to go. And then that individual, his name was Aaron. Aaron started to teach me about grades and grade point averages and courses that you needed to take and what colleges look like. And then here's how are you going to pay for this? And I was fortunate enough that myself and three of my other friends, he was our mentor, and he took us on college tours. So we got to see colleges in Boston. He even took us down to Maryland and DC, and we got to see some of those colleges in the area.
Oh man, you ain't come down here. Yeah,
yes, and so I'll say this, and I don't know that I share this a lot with a lot of people, but my first choice of schools was the University of Maryland at College Park, and I could not afford to go at that time, and so I still to this day I hold a huge affinity for the University of Maryland. I have nothing to do with the school, but every time that I'm in the Maryland DC area, I gotta stop in College Park and either hit the arena or hit the bookstore and buy something that says University of Maryland, because as a teenager, that was very impressionable to me to have a mentor who took time out of their schedule to drive 4 young men down to that area. We went to the Naval Academy. We went to Maryland. I think we visited George Mason. We did Georgetown. So it was really instrumental. And then as I've moved on in life, and then certainly, and he knows this because I share it on every show that I'm on, when I came into this space, going circa the year 2001 or the year 2000, first person I meet at the Philly conference, Eastern Ace, Walter Tarver. And so we have been rolling deep as friends for all that time now, and it's 2021, and we still talk, we still text each other. We always ask how our families are doing, how everyone's doing back at home. So it's a bond that we've built, and he's the person, and he can tell you this every year, like, hey, what are you doing in your office? What's working? What kind of problems you have? And what should I be on the lookout for? And then I've gotten to meet so many other people. Like I said, I've gotten to meet Noah and pick his brain. I get to pick all these different people and pick their brains. And I think that for me is a form of mentorship as well.
I love it. I love it. I was thinking in my mind, I don't want to steal the thunder, but I got a University of Maryland story. I'll share it later. In regards to one of my boys was getting recruited to play football there. So I'll share that another time. But yeah, that was a fun place to go or visit. So this is one of the questions I've asked a lot of people, and I think it's just very timely. How has being a parent and that intersection, the skills and lessons and advice that you do as a parent and the ones that you do as a hire, how do they overlap? You know, and you just heard Noah say, you know what, I'm still outgoing and I'm still loud and I talk a lot. It don't matter, or I'm patient. Like, what's the ones that you have?
I've learned early on that balance is important at work and at home, because Noah's very funny. I was laughing in hysterics here. I was rolling over because he's talking about how he's super outgoing and his wife is a saint. And I would probably say the exact same thing. My personality is very, very outgoing. And the person that I live with, my wife, is an artist and she's more quiet, more creative. And so I get told sometimes to like, you got to settle down. You're too excited. And it could be about anything. But but I think the other piece is my child has a mixture of both of us. And so listening, I think, is important. That is a skill that carries over not only in careers, as we do that when we're listening to our students, when we're listening to our supervisors, or carrying on conversations with our colleagues, but listening to your child, listening to your partner, being able to at least take everybody's perspective in as well, because everybody's an individual. Everybody's going to have different talents, different energies, and being respectful. And I think that's the one thing that's super important. And I think that goes in both. That can be carried through anything in life, but I think that there's a balance.
And then my other question is the same thing I ask a lot of gentlemen is, you know, when you look at the strengths and talents of your daughter, do you already start putting that career hat and saying jobs that you think it would have, or you just like, let her be a child and enjoy those talents right now, rather than, like I said, like, my son's good at math. He going to be Google. Holler at him right now. You know what I'm saying? Like Amazon, I need that Amazon money. You know what I'm saying? Get my kid, you know, like projecting careers.
That's too funny. I think I share that with her mother, but I definitely don't impart that on my child, only because they grow up so fast and the world it pushes them so fast to be this. And that's when you look at, because I get to go into high schools as well and have conversations with teachers and with students. And I think some of the damage that gets done sometimes is when people are telling these 14, 15, and 16-year-olds, you need to know exactly right now what you're going to be for the rest of your life and what career and what profession you're going to get. And I'm saying to myself, if you spoke to half the people in most professions, they'll look at you and tell you they have no idea what they want to do. None. And so how can you expect a person who hasn't matured, who hasn't developed mentally at 14, 15, 19 years old to tell you that I want to be an engineer for the rest of my life, or I want to do this? So I think you have to let individuals find their space. And certainly with an 8-year-old, there's going to be so many things that she's going to test out in life, that she's going to try. And I think the most important thing as a parent is to support her, so that if 1 week or 1 month she likes sports and then she hates sports, that'll kill me, of course. That'll hurt. But if she doesn't like sports, then I want to support her in whatever it is. Because right now we're trying a couple of things. We're trying ice skating. She's trying to learn how to play the violin. So we want to mix it up and see where that goes. And then, you know, she could get to high school or middle school and like one thing, and then get to high school and it's completely different, and then go to college, and again, that can change. So I think giving our children the flexibility and the freedom to try and test things out, I think, is important.
All right. So I actually want to ask this too. Do you think that, and this, I like that you're the last person, because I'm just pulling questions from everyone else. Do you think that we have the cheat sheet now? Do you think that we have the cheat sheet on college, or the cheat sheet on careers? Like, and what I mean by that, I love, because I thought about that too now. Like, I remember if I were to orientation, I would be like, we're going to the career services office. Okay, what organizations you got on? Like, I got this like student services hat on. What's here? You know, like, what's the meal plan? Like, I already know some stuff to look at as I, you know, invest money in my kids. So what about, and my wife does the same now, even as she's an elementary school social worker. So she know the deal, like, who is the principal? What is this? She knows all these metrics because she's behind the scenes. Do you think we have that cheat sheet as well?
So yes, I will answer that. But I did want to say very quickly, because I wanted to say this early on, shout out to Dorothy Hayden. She's been with us tonight, chilling. She's been making comments. So Dorothy, hope you're doing well, and being here with us tonight. But yes, I will agree. We do have the cheat sheet. But again, I'm going to go back to the individuality of the person. And when you think about this, every time that we as career professionals get to work open houses at our institutions, there is a very, very different perception from a parent, a guardian, or a champion to what that 17, 16, 17, or 18-year-old is hoping to see. And so I think that the families, the champions, the support system all want to see the services. What are they going to do? What types of jobs are they going to get? Where do they get help if they're lonely? Who do they visit? What offices? Where I think the importance for most of the students that we interact with is going to be, all right, I want to know about the major. Tell me what are the professors like? Are they good or are they not? Are the classes good or do they suck? I mean, those are the things they want to know. They sometimes want to ask, what's the social scene like? How do we make friends? So there's two very different entities. And I think that as a parent, you can share the knowledge because we do have the cheat sheet. We do have the code now. We know what to ask, but you also have to find out what's important for your child as well when you are looking at colleges and universities, because it's going to be something so different than what you think.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be different because they're gonna have robots everywhere and holograms, and teachers not gonna be there.
AI is taking over. You know that.
And robots and flying cars like the Jetsons. I mean, that's how I picture college already. Like they probably gonna have the little plug in the back of the head like the Matrix and just get degrees downloaded into their brain for some amount of money or credits or something like that. I don't know. I agree with you. Like we have this vision now, but we don't know what college is gonna look like in 20 years. Probably very, very different.
Absolutely.
So I enjoy this. This is a late night. I know that it's past bedtime. So I'm gonna challenge you for it. As we end the show, I'm gonna challenge you with 2 gems. So can you leave us with 2 gems that you want to leave with us as we wrap up and shut this thing down? But 2 things you want to leave. 2 things you want to leave for the listeners or viewers tonight.
Well, two things. One of the things that's most important, I do tend to talk about this a lot especially when I get to present or I sit on panels, and we as professionals, I think, or as parents or just human beings, take the time to provide yourself a mental break. I think that's important. Being able to recharge. We're in a pace right now over the last 2 years with COVID and all this stuff that people are just mentally, physically exhausted. We've been dealing with a lot as a country, but I hope that people do not forget to be able to take that break and unplug, disconnect, refresh, re-energize. So that's probably the first thing that I would say. And I think that the last gem is whenever you're dealing with your staff, you're dealing with your colleagues, you're dealing with people in general, let's just be kind to one another. There is too much anger. There is too much impatience. And I think if we could learn to be kind, and I'll take this play from you, Philip, and George Mason. I love the kindness ambassadors. I shared that on our campus, and people they were up in arms. They were loving that concept. But people just seem to be angry. Whatever this pandemic has done to people, let's hope that at the end of the day, people remember that we're all human beings, and to be kind to one another, whoever you might be, whatever walk of life you come from, just be kind to people. That's my.
I love it. I'm gonna definitely have to share that Mason chooses kindness thing with you. You can ask me any questions about it. Definitely, it's a university initiative that we're doing, but it's been also dope, as you said. Like sometimes you don't know what people are going through, the secret battles they have, and just like someone just being marginally nice to you could just change your world. You know what I'm saying? So I be thinking about that all the time. Don't take myself too seriously, and I don't try to take others too seriously, and just try to be funny, and also just make fun of myself. But it is what it is. Another hashtag.
And Phil, I would say it's a reflection on our campuses as well, because I always share this with my staff, and I share it with our senior leadership. It doesn't take a person a lot as you're walking across your campus to just say good morning, say hello, say hi to a student, say hi to a faculty member, say hi to a colleague, good morning, good morning. That's all you have to do. That could be the difference in making somebody's day, that, oh, somebody actually acknowledged me. Or as I like to call it, and I joke around it, or it's a super psychological experiment that you're running on people to see who responds and who doesn't. But I think
Do you know who you're talking to? You know I'm running this experiment all the time. I randomly the most random person. I love just saying hi and talking to random people and see if they respond. I have no shame because at the end of the day, I love what you say. It also costs me nothing. It's free 99. Like
Absolutely.
I ain't spending no money to just say something nice, and I think I appreciate that. So, Junior, you've been a great. I think the way that you landed the plane about kindness, I want to just say I've been really impressed by all of you, and you know I specifically reached out to all of you gentlemen because of how you have exhibited that kindness to me. And so I want to say thank you as my last guest. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that you were jumping on off, got the cat scratching and watching the show. So I appreciate you being the last one, but I really appreciate you taking your time. All y'all, it really meant a lot to me. And so thank you. I'm going to land this plane. I don't know why I say that. Like that's a phrase. And then we'll get together in Atlantic City. Drinks on Bob, as I said earlier. That's the new hashtag. Drinks on
Drinks on
Bob.
Bob.
Drinks on Bob. Because he's balling out. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Oops, sorry. I did that again. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
No.
I love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking together. Thank you so much for taking the time. I definitely love this. I don't know. Maybe I'll do this biannually. I'll definitely have this panel style because everyone tonight shared so much that it was really appreciated. As I said earlier, before I even came on the show, I told you that I lost some of my episodes and I was really bummed. And I just reached out to these gentlemen. I said, would you all mind being on your show with my show with me and taking your time out of your night to join me? And all of them said a resounding yes. And for me, that means a lot. That means a lot beyond some show, just a time to have a conversation and learn. So I really appreciate everyone. And for all those that stuck with us and listen, shout out to Dorothy. You may not know this. She probably shared it, but I'm going to share it multiple times. Shout out to Dorothy, who is Employee of the Month of George Mason University. Her ceremony is next week. So proud of her. She's doing amazing things. So thank you, Dorothy, for being an amazing colleague. And I'm so glad that you're getting recognized for all the good things that you're doing. I really appreciate you, and you deserve all the blessings and goodness in life that comes your way. So I want to say thank you to all of those. Please listen to Positive Philter. I will be dropping this on the audio on iTunes and Apple and all that stuff, maybe by Friday, whenever I can get to it. But we'll have the audio for those that want to listen to it. But then you can also visit this YouTube. You can visit the YouTube and the LinkedIn and the Facebook to watch this again. So this will be ready for all those that want to check this out and revisit some of these gems that were dropped tonight, because I know I took a lot of benefit from it. So it's getting late. I want to say thank you. Positive Philter on all platforms, and have a great night.